Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has increased his government's influence over higher education. A new law passed Tuesday will set up foundations led by government appointees to take over the administration of universities and cultural institutions. The move has been slammed by the opposition and a former minister who served under Orban in the 1990s. He called the move part of a, quote, ideological war declared by the prime minister. So to talk more about Hungary and Viktor Orban, I want to bring in Reuters correspondent Marton Dunai. He joins us now from the capital, Budapest. So thank you so much for joining us. So we're starting off talking about the government oversight of public universities, but it's much bigger than that. But we'll start there. What do opponents of this new bill fear will happen?
They fear Orban will exert control over higher education, even if he loses power next year in next year's election. It's another instance of power grab, in their opinion. The government, of course, says this is nothing out of the ordinary. Universities are controlled by foundations all around the world, and they just want to sort of create a more independent higher education sector.
So the reason that I say it's sort of part of a bigger issue is that, you know, NGOs and other organizations have been watching what's been happening in Hungary for a while now. A report released a year ago by the NGO Freedom House said that Hungary under Orban is no longer a democracy, but rather a hybrid regime. And I've heard some critics say that what he is doing in Hungary is sort of almost a perfect game plan to very softly chip away at democracy without anyone noticing. Can you talk a little bit about the changes that have been happening, maybe since 2005, incrementally, that have some people concerned about democracy in Hungary?
Yeah, Orban, when he came to power, actually it was in 2010, one of the first things he did is he passed a new media law, which severely restricted a previously much wider media freedom in the country. It then proceeded to take ownership control of media via businessmen, associates of the prime minister. It has a wide influence in advertising, also in key sectors like finance, energy, infrastructure. And that sort of political dominance then translated into a business dominance. And now, actually, it's not even only what critics say. Orban himself openly declared a sort of a war or a struggle for the minds and the hearts of the people. So it's sort of like an ideological, cultural iteration of the same effort to reach dominance in the country. Now, what that means, that ideology is Orban is a self-defined illiberal. It pretends to defend Christian conservative values, but then uses rails against immigration and LGBT people as sort of the means for that. So it's really a strange hybrid of sorts of this arch-orthodox, ultra-conservative ideology and this increasing influence in the country.
And as I understand it, the way it works there, if a party holds 2/3 of the parliament, which Orban's party does, then they have a lot of leeway when it comes to passing laws and even changing the constitution. And it's not so hard to get 2/3 of the parliament because you just need sort of a little bit more than 50% of the popular vote to get there. And so his party has been particularly heavy-handed when it came to migrants crossing the border from Syria into Hungary, even putting up a fence. And now the pandemic is sort of giving him a little more power as well. Can you talk about the impact of the pandemic on Orban's agenda?
There were fears this time last year when Orban passed a sort of state of emergency, extending his powers and sort of allowing the government to bypass parliament when necessary. And his critics feared that this would be another instance of a wide crackdown and erasing the rules of democracy. That never happened. And the difference really wasn't that big from Orban's normal times power. He does have a 2/3 majority in parliament, which does mean that he can do basically anything he wants. The majority is also very tightly controlled, so it's not like the MPs are freely voting this way or that way. It's a super, strictly controlled regime. That never really panned out. The pandemic, though, did have another effect on Orban. Hungary does have the highest mortality rate per capita in the world in the whole of the pandemic, that according to Johns Hopkins University. And the economy expectedly took a big hit. So elections coming next year, Orban is not nearly as strong as he has been in the last 10 plus years. Plus, the opposition has unified against him for the first time, so he does have a credible challenger as well. So it's not going to be easy for him. And coming back to university reform, a lot of people say that he's doing what he's doing now because he senses danger politically, and he wants to ensure that his associates control the higher education sector practically and ideologically in case he loses power next year.
So, Martin, very quickly, if his critics are correct, are we hearing anything from the European Union? Is the European Union expressing any concern?
Not drastically out in the open, but one telling sign was when Orban went to see the Commission President week before last to talk about the reconstruction aid from the European Union, which has two major parts. One is a grant, and the other is a set of loans. And Orban, in the end, ended up not taking the loan part, only the grant part. And that also meant that the loan part, which would have financed this new university system in a big part, will not be applied in the university reform. That also means that the EU has no control over the money. And so basically that means that Orban sort of deflected a European Union attempt to control or sort of defuse the situation a little bit, and even gave up as much as 3-4 billion euros to sort of steer clear of that.
Marton Dunai, we have to wrap up this conversation right now, but I'm really glad we're talking about it. It's an area that we haven't really been focusing on because, we've been dealing with the pandemic. You are a Reuters correspondent in Budapest. Thank you very much.
Thank you.